Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox Recording here. Is quad tracking your guitars a complete waste of time? Well, yeah. And no. The right question to ask is if quad tracking is a waste of time for you. And I'm going to explain why in this video. Now, if you're into metal production, even if you're only recording demos, I'm sure you've watched an interview or two with a pro metal engineer. And you probably soon found out that some are huge advocates of quad tracking, and some claim you don't need to do it. So the question is, what do you do? Well, I have my opinion and I'd like to share it with you, and hopefully this will help clarify so you can make the proper decision for your own productions. And when people ask me, the first thing I ask is, what do you want your guitars to sound like? In other words, what do you feel like your guitars are missing right now that you want more of? And often I'll hear things like, I want my guitars to be bigger sounding, heavier sounding, thicker sounding, clearer sounding, wider sounding. And what I find interesting about this is that all of those attributes I just mentioned have nothing to do with quad tracking at all. As a matter of fact, quad tracking, when done improperly, can make your guitars actually sound smaller, less clear, and just worse. Now, I'm not saying quad tracking is bad. There are excellent producers out there that do it with great success. A prime example of this is all of those great sounding metalcore records that came out 15 years ago during the mid-2000s. And just in case you're not familiar with what quad tracking is when you take your rhythm guitars, you record one performance on the left, one performance on the right, and then record a third and fourth performance, and maybe even pan them in a little. So you have a wide pan pair, as well as a slightly panned in pair. Some producers even pan both of them out wide, but the idea is that you have 4 tracks instead of 2. Now, me personally, I do not quad track my rhythm guitars. In other words, I do not record 4 tracks that are always happening on top of one another throughout the whole performance of a song. I found that one type performance on the left and another type performance on the right with a properly recorded guitar tone, whether it's an amp sim or a live amp, is all I need for a huge, heavy, thick, full, clear metal guitar tone. The other thing I like about keeping it simple like this is that I can overdub, let's say it's a chorus, then I can add a third and fourth guitar, and there's extra space there to help change up the vibe of the song within a specific section where I want a slightly different color. So for me, it's a win-win. Not only do I get enough from just having a left and a right guitar track, but I have this extra space to work with when I want to add extra color. Now, you might think that I'm against quad tracking, and I'm definitely not. And that's because quad tracking does have its own unique vibe and sound to it. And what I mean by this is quad tracking has a sound to it that you can't really accomplish with just a left and a right guitar track. Having your main left and right guitar performance and guitar tone, as well as doubling it with a third and fourth guitar track, maybe with a different guitar tone, does produce an interesting sound. For me, it sounds a little softer, maybe a little rounder, but again, not heavier and definitely not clearer. Quad tracking definitely does not produce a thicker, heavier, or fuller sound. It's just a different sound. One thing to keep in mind is that if you decide to quad track because you're a fan of that kind of sound, is you really have to make sure your guitars are tight. If they're not tight, you will end up with a mess of guitars that will never sound right in a pro level mix. That's just a reality. So again, in my opinion, quad tracking does have its place, and if you're a fan of that kind of tone, that old school metalcore tone, have at it. But if you're not happy with your guitar tone because your guitars sound fizzy, not heavy enough, not clear enough, not thick enough, quad tracking them is not gonna help you. If anything, it's gonna make your tone worse. Believe me, I've been there. Back when I started out, I quad tracked all of my guitars because I really wanted a better guitar tone, and I thought that more was more, when in reality, as we all know, less is often more. And it wasn't until I paid close attention to my tracking and made sure all of the performances were super tight and that I was getting the tone right at the source that I start producing truly professional guitar tones. Not only that, but instead of using weak sounding amp sims, I started using a solid impulse response, because at the end of the day, an impulse response is really what's gonna make your guitar tone work in a plugin. With that being said, you could download my custom impulse response for absolutely free. There's a link below in this video's description. Download it and load it into your amp sim plugin to help dialing in a metal guitar tone a million times easier. Now, I hope this clears up any confusion you might have about quad tracking. I really wanted to make this video because I do a lot of mixing, and a lot of times people will send me their projects to mix and they have so many guitar layers. And when I ask them why they track so many guitars, they'll tell me they wanted a thicker guitar tone. And unfortunately, this is not the way to a thicker guitar tone. Again, it's often the fastest way to a smaller, messier, unclear guitar tone, and we really don't want that. So tell me, I'd love to know, are you a fan of quad tracking? If so, leave a comment in the comment section below and tell me all about it. I love hearing others' opinions on guitar tone and all things metal production. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. You can both like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description below. And again, you could download my custom impulse response of my favorite Mesa Boogie cab out of my studio for absolutely free. There's a link below, right within this video's description. Till next time, happy recording.